The story begins with Cheyenne, who wasn't like normal guys. Since the beginning, he was super into magic. He once read somewhere that if he didn't get a girlfriend by the time he turned 30, he'd become a wizard. So he stayed single until 30, and when he finally tried doing magic, nothing actually happened. Completely crushed, he sat there feeling hopeless. And then out of nowhere, his chest started hurting, and he just died. Next thing he knew, he was reborn in another world. His older sister Marie was beyond happy to see him. Years passed in this new world, and Cheyenne kept trying to use magic, but no matter what he did, he couldn't do magic. He was constantly sad by this. One day while eating with his family, he asked his dad if monsters and fairies were real. His dad told him that they existed in this world. But he warns him to stay away from monsters. That got Cheyenne excited, so he immediately asked if magic exists in the world. But his dad hit him with the worst news: magic wasn't a thing here. No one had even heard of it. That completely crushed Cheyenne. Seeing him so down, Marie couldn't help but worry. Years passed, and one day, after practicing sword fighting, Marie sat down next to Cheyenne. He asked her why she trained so much, and she told him she was learning to fight so she could protect him, and it makes him realize how much his sister cares about him. That evening, Marie was practicing by the river for a long time when her friend Rose showed up. Rose asked if her brother was still at home studying like always, and that's when Marie realized Cheyenne had been obsessed with studying for years, probably because he was still searching for magic. Right then they noticed strange glowing lights coming from the river. So the next day Marie took Cheyenne to the river, and after a while, a bunch of glowing orbs started rising from the water. She told him their parents couldn't see them, which made Cheyenne think maybe only some certain people can see them. Marie smiled and said, "This is just like the magic you always talk about." Hearing that, Cheyenne got emotional and thanked her for remembering what he said that day. The next morning, they quickly finished breakfast and grabbed 2 buckets before heading back to the river. Marie asked what he was planning, and Cheyenne said he wanted to figure out where the glowing orbs were coming from. So they started collecting stuff: 1 bucket for river plants, another for river stones, and a third one for water. Then, they began catching fish to put in the water bucket, hoping to figure out the secret behind the glowing orbs. It took them a long time to catch a fish, but they finally managed to get one and dropped it into the bucket. Just then, Rose comes there looking for Marie, and she wonders what they were up to. So Cheyenne explained that they were trying to figure out the mystery behind the glowing orbs, so they were catching fish for research. Evening came and like always, the glowing orbs started rising from the river. But nothing came out of their buckets. That's when Cheyenne realized they probably needed a different type of fish. Rose, however, pointed out that catching every kind of creature in the river was impossible. So Cheyenne waded into the water, and Marie followed him. He reached out and touched one of the glowing orbs, which felt warm to them. Cheyenne noticed that the orbs were appearing from different spots every time, which made him think they were coming from some kind of creatures. He even dunked his head underwater to look, but he couldn't see anything, so they climbed back out. Right then Rose managed to catch a female fish and dropped it into the water bucket. And suddenly, the glowing orbs started appearing inside the bucket. That's when Cheyenne finally understood. The fish were creating the light to attract each other. Rose explained that the fish did this as part of their mating process. Hearing that, Marie casually said, "Then I'll marry Cheyenne one day too." Cheyenne, caught off guard, immediately clarified that siblings can't do that. The next day, Marie told Cheyenne that their mom had also refused to let them get married. She looked sad because she always wanted to stay with him. Cheyenne, feeling bad for her, promised that he would never get married. He hugged her tightly and vowed that they would always be together. And then his body started glowing. Cheyenne was stunned and wonders, could this be magic? That moment changed everything for him. He became certain that magic existed in this world. No one had discovered it yet, but he would be the first. The next day, Cheyenne was deep in thought, reflecting on everything that had happened in his life. He raised his hand and tried to use magic, but as usual nothing happened. Marie showed up to call him for dinner, but instead Cheyenne asked her to sit with him. Then out of nowhere, he confessed his love to her, which causes his body to be lit up with magic again. So Cheyenne wonders what was triggering it. But before he could think further, Marie got mad. She accused him of lying just to test his magic. Cheyenne quickly reassured her that he wasn't lying, and when she realized he was serious, she became happy. That's when it hit him. Expressing his emotions made his magic activate. Excitement, joy, happiness. Whenever he truly felt something, his body reacted with magic. At that moment, Cheyenne realizes humans could activate magic at will. Overwhelmed with happiness, he couldn't stop smiling. And Marie was just as happy, because for the first time in his life, Cheyenne was genuinely happy. A month passed since Cheyenne started researching magic, and he had figured out a few things. First, not everyone could see magic. Second, strong emotions were necessary to activate it. Third, using magic too much made his body tired. And fourth, if he used up all his magic, his capacity increased the next time. But no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't create the glowing orbs like the fish did. That made him wonder if his magic was even weaker than a fish's. Then an idea popped into his head. He tried gathering his magic into his hand. It took multiple attempts, but eventually he succeeded. His hand started glowing. Excited, he immediately punched a wall, which causes his hand to hurt like hell, but he didn't even care. He had successfully concentrated magic into his body. The next day, his dad called him to join Marie and Rose for sword training. But Cheyenne is more interested in practicing magic, and he tries to refuse. But his dad insisted, saying he needed to learn sword fighting for self-defense against monsters. Marie also encouraged him, so he had no choice but to train. Turns out sword fighting was exhausting. Within minutes he was out of breath, making his dad think he wasn't cut out for it. So Cheyenne stepped back and watched as Marie trained with their father. She tried to outsmart him, launching a sneaky attack. But their father easily dodged it, and easily defeated her. But instead of scolding her, he praised her effort. And Marie, beaming with pride, looked happier than ever. Later, Cheyenne returned to his room and tried to release magic from his body. No matter how hard he focused, nothing happened. Just then, his father walked in and asked if he wanted to come with him to Istria City. Cheyenne, curious and excited, immediately agreed. They traveled as a family to the city, spending the whole day shopping in the busy marketplace. Eventually, their father took them to a blacksmith shop, where they met Grast, an old friend of his. Cheyenne's father asked about his order, and Grast brought out a brand new sword for Marie. Marie unsheathed it, eyes sparkling with excitement. She was absolutely thrilled. After finishing up, they all climbed into a carriage to head home. That's when Cheyenne noticed something strange, a man standing outside a shop, holding a cage. Inside the cage was a fairy. Cheyenne immediately turned to his father, asking about the shop. But his father tells him to stay away from that place. And Cheyenne quickly apologized for asking. But his eyes had already caught the sign above the shop's entrance. It read Fairy Cellar. As a guy is heading back to the village from the forest, a wounded man suddenly comes running and collapses near him, gasping that they were attacked by goblins. It's raining heavily that day, so Cheyenne and Marie are inside practicing magic. Cheyenne proudly says he's gotten way better at controlling his magic now, while Marie mentions that magic feels super warm to her. But Cheyenne isn't totally satisfied with his progress. He wants to master firebolt and lightning spells. As he wonders why his dad told him to stay away from the fairy shop, they hear people talking outside. Stepping out of the room, they see their dad talking with some people. Cheyenne asks his father what's going on, and his dad explains that some goblins have been spotted in the area, so he's heading out to deal with them. Cheyenne actually gets excited. He thinks fighting goblins might help him understand magic better. But then he notices how serious everyone looks, and even his sister's hand is shaking with fear. He thinks maybe goblins aren't just some weak monsters in this world. So he asks his dad, can goblins jump high or climb stairs to the second floor? His dad shakes his head. They're not that smart or strong. So Cheyenne quickly suggests that everyone should hide in second-floor rooms. His dad, impressed by his quick thinking, tells him to do just that before heading off. Cheyenne gathers the villagers and hides them in the second-floor rooms, making sure to block all the windows and doors with tables. Hours pass and their dad still hasn't returned. Then out of nowhere, a terrifying goblin sneaks into their house. To everyone's horror, it actually climbs the stairs and reaches the second floor. The goblin starts scratching at the doors with its sharp claws, making an eerie screeching sound. Everyone inside is terrified, but they stay completely silent. Eventually, the goblin seems to lose interest and starts walking away. But right then a loud thunderclap echoes through the sky and someone accidentally screams. The goblin immediately turns back. It now knows they're inside. So it starts slamming against the door, each hit making the wood crack. Within moments the door shatters, and the goblin steps in. Seeing the creature right in front of them, everyone freezes in fear. But the goblin laughs at their helplessness. Their mother comes forward to defend them, but she is too afraid to do anything. Marie quickly draws her sword to fight, but before she can strike, the goblin swats it away like it's nothing. Then it starts coming closer to her, and just as it's about to land a hit, her mother jumps in between. The goblin's claws slash across her, and she collapses with a deep wound. Now the goblin turns back to Marie, ready to attack again. Cheyenne panics as he has no clue what to do, but without thinking he grabs the goblin's arm. That's when he sees magic flowing inside the goblin. Acting on instinct, he tightens his grip and starts channeling magic heat into its arm. The goblin screeches as its skin begins to burn. But Cheyenne doesn't stop. He leaps up and presses his hand against the goblin's head, pouring more magic heat into it. The goblin thrashes wildly, but after a few intense moments it became lifeless. The villagers start looking at Cheyenne with fear, but he doesn't understand why. However, Rose steps forward and thanks him for saving their lives. Then their attention shifts to his mother. She's badly injured. Cheyenne immediately realizes that her life is in danger. With the help of the villagers, he lays her down on a bed. But there's a problem. There's no doctor in the village. That's when he remembers the surgeries he's seen on TV. He quickly tells the villagers to bring sewing supplies, alcohol, and clean clothes. Cheyenne asks villagers if anyone knows stitching, and a lady steps forward. Cheyenne then asks the lady to stitch his mother's wound, but she hesitates, fearing it might make things worse. Cheyenne realizes that in this world, no one knows about stitching wounds. So he desperately pleads with her to trust him. After some hesitation, the lady finally agrees. They clean the wound with alcohol and heat the needle to sterilize it. The lady, though nervous, carefully stitches the wound. Just as they finish, their father knocks on their door. And he immediately brings a doctor. The doctor examines her injuries and is surprised. From the way the wound has been treated, it looks like a professional medical expert worked on it. Later, Cheyenne's father learns everything that happened, so he asks Cheyenne how he knows about medical treatment. Cheyenne hesitates to reveal the truth, so he says he doesn't know anything about it. His father then asks if he used magic to defeat the goblin, because years ago, Cheyenne had once mentioned something strange like magic. Cheyenne thinks their father might not believe magic exists, but Marie tells him that he's been researching magic. As expected, his father's expression darkens. He warns that if people find out about this, Cheyenne's life could be in danger. So he sternly orders him to stop researching magic. But Marie immediately tells him Cheyenne can't do that. Their father's anger flares as he warns magic is dangerous. But Cheyenne refuses to back down as he explains magic is his only dream. His father grows frustrated, warning him again. But then Cheyenne says if his research ever puts them in danger, he can disown. His father stares into his eyes. And in that moment he sees Cheyenne's determination. Realizing that his son won't give up, he finally sighs and agrees to let him continue his research. Cheyenne is overwhelmed with emotion and starts crying tears of joy. And his father promised to help him with his research. The next day, the three of them step outside the house. Then Cheyenne's dad sets some sticks on fire. Cheyenne gathers magic in his hand and brings it close to the fire. But as soon as he does, his hand starts burning. So his dad quickly poured water on him. Marie gets worried about Cheyenne, but he tells her that this experiment actually taught him something. Whenever he touches the yellow flames with his magic, the flame turns blue, and his magic starts burning. His dad can't see the magic, but he starts believing Cheyenne. Cheyenne feels like he's finally making progress with fire magic, and if things go well, he might soon be able to throw fireballs. He experiments again, and this time he learns that the fire doesn't change the temperature of his hand, and it stays blue. He asks his dad to throw in more sticks, and he repeats the experiment, but the result stays the same. He tries again and again in different ways, but nothing changes. Eventually, his dad tells him to take a break and goes to get him something to eat. Then Rose shows up, and Cheyenne tells her everything that happened. So she thinks his dad is really cool. Cheyenne thanks Rose for having his back after he defeated the goblin. Rose then asks about Marie, and Cheyenne explains that she's been practicing sword fighting since morning because the goblin incident really shook her. Cheyenne has learned a few things from his experiment. If he gathers more magic, the fire grows bigger. If his magic touches something with a higher temperature, it starts burning. If he doesn't concentrate magic in his hand, the fire doesn't change color. And if he wraps his hand in cloth while holding magic, the fire burns the cloth. But he's stuck on one big problem: how to actually use magic in the real world. He wonders how he can release magic from his body like the fish did. So Marie casually demonstrates how she releases magic from her body. Rose does it just as easily, leaving Cheyenne completely shocked. They both help him figure it out, and after trying a few times, he finally manages to do it. Cheyenne then grabs a lighter and steps outside. The moment he channels his magic into it, a fireball shoots up into the sky. He's thrilled by his success, and for the first time, even his dad can see the fireball. Cheyenne decides to name this technique Flare. A month passes as he practices, but he quickly realizes that he doesn't have enough magic to use Flare repeatedly. One day he notices his sister Marie. Her hands are covered in blisters. Their dad tells her to stop, but she keeps practicing sword fighting. Cheyenne also asks her to take a break, but she just gets upset and walks away. Cheyenne feels he is stuck with fire magic, so he decides to start researching lightning magic instead. He asks his dad about electricity, but his dad has never heard of it. When Cheyenne explains that it's like lightning from the sky, his dad remembers hearing something similar from Grast. So they plan a trip to the city. Cheyenne invites Marie to come along, but she just shows him her injured hands, then shuts the door on him. They meet Grast to learn more about it, and he tells them that lightning-infused stones can be found in the mines. But because of their electricity, extracting them is really difficult. Cheyenne then asks Grast if there are any rubber trees nearby, but Grast has never even heard of rubber. So Cheyenne asks about isinglass, and Grast brings him a small piece. Thinking it might help block electricity, Cheyenne requests a larger one. But Grast explains that big pieces are extremely expensive, which crushes Cheyenne's hopes. Seeing this, his dad promises to buy him a large piece of isinglass because he wants to see him succeed. They manage to bring the lightning stone home, and Cheyenne releases his magic toward it, which causes red electricity to start sparking around it. His dad thinks the experiment failed, but Cheyenne starts dancing with excitement. From this, Cheyenne realizes that magic isn't just about fire, it mimics whatever phenomenon it interacts with. That means he might be able to use any kind of magic in future. But he still can't figure out how to release electricity from his hands. Cheyenne keeps thinking about it until an idea pops into his head. Instead of releasing his magic in a round shape, he starts experimenting with different forms. Excited, he rushes to tell Marie, but she's not in her room. He goes outside to find her, and he spots her practicing sword fighting by the river. Cheyenne apologizes for trying to stop her from training, but Marie tells him she's not mad about that. What really bothers her is that she wanted to protect him, but when she faced the goblin, she froze in fear. She's angry at herself for being weak. She admits that she feels jealous of Cheyenne because he's gotten so much stronger than her. Cheyenne understands Marie isn't just training for herself, she's training to protect him. Feeling guilty, he hugs her tightly and apologizes again. Suddenly, their bodies start glowing, and magical orbs begin floating around them.
But that's where this video ends. Make sure you like and subscribe the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.